Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy is nothing short of brilliant, breathtaking, emotional, and packed with so many epic moments to Howard Shore's soundtrack. But let's be honest, even masterpieces have their quirks, and Jackson took a few questionable liberties with Tolkien's story that current YouTubers would be all over if they came out now. Just imagine the rage, no names mentioned, but they host the real BBC podcast. Look, some changes are forgivable, even entertaining, but others, well, let's just say they left us scratching our heads a little. Take Aragorn, our noble, reluctant king, a man of honour and restraint, except in the film where he casually decapitates the Mouth of Sauron. In the books, Aragorn simply stares him down, proving that true power requires no violence. But Jackson? Oh no, he couldn't resist going full Mortal Kombat. It's a cool moment, sure, but it's a bit too aggressive for our future king. Imagine if this was his ruling style. Minas Tirith would have more headless diplomats than functioning laws. And speaking of overpowered, let's talk about the army of the dead. In the books, these spectral warriors do Aragorn a solid by helping him seize the ships. That's it. They don't charge into battle like a glowing, dancing plague army, wiping out Mordor's forces in seconds. But in the films, they basically delete the enemy army like an Age of Empires cheat. It's visually good, but come on, did Gondor and Rohan even need to show up? Just let the spooky green mist handle everything while the humans grab a pint. Then there's the tragic waste of Christopher Lee's Saruman. This is a man who deserved a Shakespearean downfall. He was once the greatest of wizards, only to be undone by his own pride. In the books, we get exactly that. Saruman, stripped of his power, slinks off to the Shire, where he turns it into a grim industrial hellscape. But the hobbits, having grown into warriors, take back their home, and in the end, it's Wormtongue, tired of decades of abuse, who finally ends Saruman's life. It's dark, poetic, and the perfect ending for Middle-earth's fallen wizard. But in the films, he gets poked in the back and falls off a tower like a clumsy extra in a bad action movie. If you didn't watch the extended edition, you wouldn't even know what happened to him. One of Tolkien's most fascinating villains deserved better than an unintentional slapstick routine. And let's not forget Faramir. Oh, Faramir. In the books, this man is an absolute king. Well, steward, but you get the point. He sees the One Ring, raises an eyebrow and says, "Yeah, I'm not touching that cursed thing." He's noble, wise, and completely resistant to corruption, essentially what Boromir wished he could be. But in the films, Faramir kidnaps Frodo and Sam and comes dangerously close to handing the ring to Sauron. Why? Apparently Jackson thought he needed a redemption arc, but here's the thing, he didn't need redeeming. The point of Faramir was that not all men crave power, and making him hesitate over the ring just undermines what made him great in the first place. Then we have Denethor, who in the books is a deeply tragic figure, a proud, intelligent man whose despair and grief over Boromir's death lead him to make terrible choices. But in the films, he's a full-on lunatic, complete with greasy hair, wild eyes, and the single most disturbing tomato-eating scene in cinema history. Look, we get it. Denethor is not a fun guy, but reducing him to a raving, food-splattering madman who sprints off a cliff while on fire turns a deeply layered character into a joke. At this point, you half expect Gandalf to look into the camera like a documentary host and say, "This is what happens when you don't eat second breakfast." But perhaps the biggest loss of all, the Scouring of the Shire. Yes, I mentioned this already, but in the books, Frodo and the gang return home, only to find that Saruman has taken over and turned the Shire into an Orwellian nightmare. The hobbits, once innocent and unprepared for the world, rise up and take back their homeland themselves. It's one of the most powerful moments in Tolkien's story, showing just how much the journey has changed them. But in the films, the Shire is perfectly fine. Frodo and Sam return home, grab a pint, and call it a day. Sure, it's a nice, peaceful ending, but it removes that final layer of bittersweet reality. War leaves nothing untouched. Cutting this robbed Frodo's arc of its final haunting note. But let's be real, despite these changes, The Lord of the Rings remains one of the greatest film trilogies ever made. The casting, the music, the sheer scale of Middle-earth, Jackson gave us something truly magical. Would we love to see some of these changes reversed? Absolutely. But but would we trade what we got? Not a chance. What do you think? Did any of these changes bug you, or are you just here for the epic ride? Drop a comment below, and remember, one script to rule them all, one click to like and subscribe.